right, hello, welcome to Too Many Movies, the podcast where we discuss DVDs, Blu-rays, and even the occasional VHS tape. I'm your host, Hal, and with me here today, Lauren. Introduce yourself.
I do stuff on YouTube about musicals and Full Metal Alchemist and David Tennant, mostly, sometimes other things. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it is nice. It's nice. Nice podcast, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got a couple of movies we're going to talk about today. So we'll just get right into the first one. My Neighbor Totoro. I remember when I asked you to show off like some movies you've always wanted to talk about. And I remember seeing My Neighbor Totoro on that list, and I thought, "Oh, perfect. I have that on one of my Ghibli steelbooks." So that was perfect. And it's a Ghibli film. I mean, who doesn't like Ghibli films? You know,
Oh,
it's one of those, and it's one of those very special Ghibli films. I should also mention. I mean, everybody's heard of My Neighbor Totoro, I would imagine.
mhm.
So this is perfect. So why don't you start things off? What are your thoughts on My Neighbor Totoro?
I have this movie in. I have like a probably illegal box set of every single Ghibli movie that I got for my birthday one year. It has all of them except for Boy and the Heron because I got it before that.
Right. Yeah.
What I really love about this movie is that it's a kids movie in like the purest sense of the word. When you're watching it, you really feel like you're looking at everything through the eyes of a child, and
Mm.
it brings you back to when like you're 6 years old and every single thing feels like the biggest deal in the world. When you're happy, it's absolutely transcendent. When you're sad, it's like the end of everything.
That's a
Even though
that's
like the
perfect.
stakes
Yeah.
of the movie aren't that high, but you can tell that they're high to the little girls that they're happening to.
Yeah, I always noticed that. I love this movie. First of all, I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, it's one. It's I can see why it's seen as one of the best and one of the most popular, I should say. But yeah, even though I love it, like I always did notice that when watching it, how the first big uh bit of conflict that arises in the movie is that, oh, the mom doesn't come home from the hospital, she might be really sick, and everyone's super scared of that. And then literally a couple scenes later, she's like, "No, I'm fine. Everything's fine." It's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Well, I remember being like 9 years old, and my mom was like working late at school and helping with the book fair, and like it was maybe the first time that I'd ever remembered that she like wasn't home to like kiss me goodnight at my bedtime, and I was like
Oh.
super stressed. And she comes home at like 10:30 p.m. and I've like stayed up the whole time because I like refused to go to sleep until she came home.
Oh man. You know what? I can imagine that. Yeah, I can imagine being a kid and just like imagining just the absolute worst case scenario from that because yeah, it's different. It's not part of the routine and you're not kind of used to that at that age. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, but I love how you described it perfectly though. This movie is very much from the eyes of a child. And yeah, I do feel that sense of youth whenever I watch it. I also see it as kind of like just like a fun fantasy film, and but not kind of succumbing to typical fantasy film tropes. It's very different than what you would typically see in a fantasy film in the best way possible, I would say.
Yeah, because the like it's very grounded in reality, but then you've got those little bits of whimsy peeking through.
Yeah, and also it just it doesn't feel like it needs to go through typical tropes where it's like, oh, this is the part of the fantasy film where the characters first interact with the creatures and they're weirded out by it and it's kind of awkward at first. It's like, no, get introduced to these fantasy elements and they kind of just treat them as, yeah, okay, this is how this works. Like, oh, there's these little black specks of like dust bunnies running around and they're sentient and the kids are like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Or they come across this giant
This
fucking
might as well.
creature. Sorry.
I just said this might as well happen.
Yeah, exactly. And then they come across this big giant bunny like creature and they're like, oh yeah, Totoro, sure. It's like, oh, okay. Why not?
Were you more of a May or a Satsuki as a child?
Hmm. I'd have to think about. I am the oldest child of my
Mm-hmm.
siblings, so I guess I would have to be a Satsuki by definition because I am the older sibling. I'm kind of the one who's in charge. I'm the one who has to kind of console the younger siblings, as it were. So yeah, I would say I'm very Satsuki core.
Definitely more of a May. I was an only child
Ah,
actually, um, with older parents. So I did grow up uh pretty sheltered, pretty very sensitive, very imaginative kid.
mm,
Everything, it's like I said, everything felt like it was a big deal.
yeah. Yeah, and I like
I
that both characters, even though they are kind of different from each other, they're not polar opposites where Satsuki doesn't believe in the fantasy happenings and Mei does. Like I feel like they both have kind of an understanding of the world, but they go about it in different ways. And so that makes it a little more fun. Again, it's not typical fantasy cliches where, oh, there's a character who doesn't believe that the fantasy stuff is real, you know?
trying to think if I have anything else I wanted to add. Did you say this was your first time watching the movie?
This is my second time. The first time I
Second.
watched it was when preparing for James's Ghibli ranking. Just
Yes.
yeah, because that was just kind of the vibe of those couple of weeks to months was, oh, I'm gonna start watching these Ghibli films. Even though I didn't edit the Totoro segment, I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity for me to watch all the Ghibli films, just because that's gonna be the vibe for the next couple of months. And so I did. I watched it. I loved it the first time I watched it. This was one of those Ghibli
Mhm.
films I immediately fell in love with. You know, so this was my second time. It had been a couple of years though, so I'm glad I gave myself a couple of years to kind of let it kind of sit in the background, and like revisiting it, I was able to really appreciate. I did lower my score a little, but that's just because the way my rating system has kind of evolved over the years, you know.
Twice. I didn't have time to rewatch it this week, so um I hope there wasn't like too much dead space.
No, no, I mean, I can edit out the dead space. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, no, but like, yeah, I feel like what this movie is, I think we've been saying it's very simple. But that's not a bad thing. A lot of the complexities come within the world itself.
I love the Cat Bus song so much.
Oh yeah,
It's such a bop.
oh, the cat bus in general.
Mhm.
Freaky idea.
Everything about the Cat Bus, but
Yeah.
especially the song.
Yeah, the song rocks, but I realized just how freaky it kind of is because of the way the cat bus
Where
kind
are
of
its organs?
that yeah, the way it doesn't just have a regular door that opens up, its skin just kind of opens up and widens. It's like, oh, that's kind of gross.
Uh,
It's still endearing, but there is a voice in the back of my head going, oh, that's kind of gross. But it still doesn't take away from the whimsy of this cat bus. Also, my favorite aspect that I realized about it was the headlights are just rats, but with glowing eyes.
oh my goodness, let me look this up.
Yeah. Oh, it rocks so hard. I love the design of like it's cool because it's like a cat. It looks like, I don't know, Felix the cat, but like as a bus. But then the
OMG, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah, the headlights are just
I never
rats with glowing
noticed
eyes.
that.
Yeah. It's so cool. One thing I did want to mention actually was the titular Totoro himself,
Mhm.
because it's funny, he doesn't show up until a good chunk of the way into the film.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting because I I usually I feel like that would be kind of weird. You're introducing a titular character like well into the movie, but I'm not. I don't. I'm not annoyed by that. I feel like there's still enough of the characters interacting with each other in that first half that I still find them likable and endearing. That I'm not like checking my watch, being like, all right, when's Totoro gonna show up? If anything, I feel like he shows up, even though it's like halfway through the movie, or maybe not even, just it still feels like, okay, this is definitely when he should be introduced. I feel like we've done enough kind of walking around with these characters. Now we're introduced to the actual Totoro, and it's also a very endearing scene.
And there's a very clear parallel between like you have the iconic shot in My Neighbor Totoro of Satsuki and Totoro at the bus stop with the umbrella. And then
Yes.
you've also got the iconic shot from the train scene in Spirited Away with Chihiro and No Face. And um it's like in My Neighbor Totoro, like Totoro helps the girls, and then in Spirited Away it's Chihiro that helps No Face. It's interesting.
It is, yeah, that is cool that is the most iconic shot in the movie is them waiting at the bus station Because it not much. I mean, on the surface, it seems like not much happens in that scene, but it is still a very nice scene because it is uh, Totoro kind of consoling them, waiting for their father to come home. Because this is a moment when they thought they could do something nice, wait for the father, give him an umbrella, but then he's super late, and so then Totoro's there to kind of console them, but to then thank him or something, they just give him the umbrella, and then he's able to use it. And I love that moment when he he can feel like the raindrops coming from the trees specifically
Mm.
falling on the umbrella, and then he jumps, and so then a whole lot of the raindrops start falling. It's great. It doesn't really move anything along plot wise, but it's still a nice moment regardless.
And it sort of speaks to this idea that you see in a lot of Ghibli movies. I think it's the concept of ma, which is like the Japanese idea of like negative space, and these moments
Mm,
that like in most like Western paced movies would be cut out, but you're sort of like allowed to live in them
yeah.
in these kinds of films.
Yeah, and Ghibli does that really well where you never feel cheated by this negative space. It still feels necessary to what makes the movie special.
Yeah, and I think a sort of like message you can take away from that is sort of like embrace the negative space in your own life a little more, maybe let yourself be bored and put down your phone every once in a while. Not
Yep.
to sound like a boomer, but I mean, I'm so terrible at that.
Yeah, no, but I think there absolutely is truth to that though. Yeah, like embracing the nothingness, being not in like a
Mhm.
very negative way, but in a very positive way, ironically enough.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts on My Neighbor Totoro, or should we move on to Isle of Dogs?
Uh I just really like My Neighbor Totoro. I think it's not a very complex
If
movie.
you
It's
don't like My Neighbor Totoro, I probably we probably wouldn't get along. You probably hate whimsy.
I
It's like
actually hate it.
never like a bad time for
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah.
It's always a good idea.
Yeah. It was one of those movies I heard a lot about growing up, like, oh, it's my childhood film. It's one of the greatest Ghibli ever
Mhm.
did. And then finally watching it, even though I didn't grow up with it, I instantly was able to recognize, okay, I see what this does really well.
Yeah, it's very interesting to discover things that are nostalgic for other people as
Oh
an
yeah.
adult.
Totally, totally. Yeah, no, totally. I love finding out what people were nostalgic for and trying to see can I understand that nostalgia. A lot of the times no, but it's like this
Oh my
this is
god, 8-year-old me had terrible taste.
oh well, we all have terrible tastes at 8 years old. Well, sometimes we discover something and then we rediscover it later in life as an adult and
Movie
we're
that
like,
I would like loop when I was 8 was Illuminations the Lorax.
ah,
Oh
aha.
my god,
I mean, there
I
are
can't believe
worse.
I'm 15 years old. Oh my god.
Oh, the Lorax. Oh, yeah, no. But I think My Neighbor Totoro is definitely one of those that's timeless because, yeah, it is a kid's movie, but I feel like anybody can get something out of it. It's one of those kids' movies that kind of transcends the G rating, where it
There's
actually
nothing
does feel
cynical about
general.
it.
Oh, and there's nothing cynical about it. Exactly. Yeah, nothing necessarily cynical in the movie, but it also doesn't feel cynically made either.
Mhm.
Um, I guess one more thing I wanted to mention before I guess wrap kind of ties into the Blu-ray because I want to mention this.
Yeah.
So the Studio Ghibli Steelbook comes with a booklet that I wanted to mention because it's talking about it talks about why Miyazaki made it and he wanted to make something that was like kind of prideful of Japan but more so in the
Mhm.
nature kind of way, like how Japan has some like really amazing nature, and the movie takes place in the countryside of Japan and it looks amazing. um so that's really something special. And I also wanted to mention there's this really interesting paragraph done that's it's quoted from the Studio Ghibli producer Toshio Suzuki, and he talks about the reason they made the movie from like a uh just from a general standpoint was so Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, another Studio Ghibli director, for years were making a lot of Japanese animation that took place in Europe, just because that was kind of the vibes that, you know, Japanese animation did back in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, because post World War II. So by the 80s, they wanted to be like, hey, let's make something that's, you know, speaks more in Japan, that's more prideful of Japan, or takes place in Japan, or something like that. Sorry, say again?
I just said this was the perfect way to do that.
Yes, absolutely. So that's why in 1988, Studio Ghibli had two films, one from Miyazaki, one from Takahata, that were very Japanese centric. So you had My Neighbor Totoro, that's very deep in like Japanese folklore and Japanese countryside, and then you have Takahata's Grave of the Fireflies,
Yes.
which is pretty obvious that has to do with Japan because it has to do with the war. But it's just interesting seeing these two different Japanese movies kind of tackle ideas about Japan. So it was just really interesting to hear in this little booklet here. So I just wanted to mention that because it's really interesting. I recommend people look up the entire quote. It's a fascinating read. Yeah, My Neighbor Totoro, good film. I really like it a lot.
Great movie.
I think so far in me rewatching Ghibli films, because back when I edited the segments for James, I'd only seen all these Ghibli films once. Spirited Away I saw twice, just because they started with it and then they ended with it. But through the podcast, I've been able to rewatch a bunch of Ghibli films. So far we've talked about Princess Kaguya, Spirited Away, Grave of the Fireflies, and Whisper of the Heart, and now My Neighbor Totoro makes 5. So I think out of rewatching all of these so far, I think My Neighbor Totoro might be in the running as my favorite so far. So far, I'll say that. You know, who knows? Maybe another one will overtake it, but so far, My Neighbor Totoro is my favorite one. It's just really good. But yeah, you said you own it. In that, I love how you described it. You're possibly illegal box set.
Yeah.
I figure you're gonna keep it though.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I will never.
Yeah, no, good movie. So, yeah. Do we want to move on to Isle of Dogs now?
Yeah.
All right, great, perfect.
So this was baby's first Wes Anderson.
Real? Oh, first like Wes Anderson in general.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I've never seen a Wes Anderson movie. I know. I flopped so bad.
No, you know what? You got to start somewhere.
You love him so much, and I was like, I know. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh yeah, no. There's plenty of movies I've never seen that are, you know, considered classics. One of the biggest ones is Seven Samurai. I still haven't seen Seven Samurai, but that's like considered.
I think I've heard of Seven Samurai.
Oh, it's a Kurosawa film, another Japanese director, said to be one of the greatest movies ever made. I still haven't seen it, but someday I will. You know, you got to take your time sometimes. Yeah. It's better to take your time than to completely force yourself into movies. There have been plenty of times I've forced myself to watch a classic and it has not ended well. So,
oh my god, I got like so bad at that with music, because I was just like scarfing down album after album after album and not really letting myself enjoy any of them.
Oh yeah, especially
so I had
music.
To develop a system where I could like keep my listening habits consistent, but also like savor the stuff that I actually liked.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, music is weird for me because, I mean, another classic I've never actually listened to. I am terrible when it comes to the Beatles. I could not tell you any of my favorite Beatles songs because I never really listened to them. Not out of obligation, not out of like being like a contrarian or anything, by the way. I just haven't had a chance to listen to many Beatles songs. Like that's
I get it. I mean, I've never listened to a Phoebe Bridgers song all the way through, and like everyone who knows me knows that I would probably love her, but like I just haven't. I'm getting to her eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a big Beatles phase in middle school. I've listened to most of their albums. I think there's only a couple left that I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've heard, I like Eleanor Rigby, so
While My Guitar Gently Weeps is my favorite.
Yeah. But yeah, Wes Anderson. You know what? You got to start somewhere. You know, you never know what your first will be. My first Wes Anderson film was The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
I haven't heard of the movie either.
Yeah, it's it's good from what I remember, but it's been a couple of years. But anyway, so Wes Anderson is an interesting director.
Mhm.
I think the more I watch from him, and definitely the more I rewatch from him, he's definitely becoming. I don't have a set in stone favorite director, but I do
Mhm.
have like a handful that that I would consider my go-tos as some of my favorites. You know, you would have
Mhm.
stuff like Kubrick, Spielberg, Hitchcock, Edgar Wright, and Wes Anderson would absolutely be in that grouping. Uh,
Yeah, I feel I was trying to like get a sense of like what his distinguishing characteristics are
mhm.
solely based on like this one movie. And I
Mm,
mean, he does like Wikipedia said that this movie was definitely influenced by Miyazaki movies, and I can totally see that. So this was like a
mm,
great pairing. It's like
yeah.
the combination of dryness and whimsy, I think, is a big thing that distinguishes him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah.
like you sort of take this um like whimsical idea that everyone finds appealing and then you kind of do something a little bit twisted with it.
Sure. Yeah, Twisted is a good way.
Like, oh, you want to make a movie about dogs? Everyone loves dogs, right? And then
Yeah.
it's like an allegory for fear mongering about immigrants.
Send all the dogs to an island made of trash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like the metaphor was for the most part really effectively done. I feel
Yeah.
like if you're gonna do like an anti-authoritarian, like anti-fascism movie that's like meant to comment on what's going on at the time the thing is being made, you don't have to be subtle, but what you do have to be is specific. And this
Mhm.
movie did a great job with that.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you're
like
not going to be subtle,
the part
go
that
ahead.
yeah, the part that I think really stuck out to me where it's like, oh, you know exactly what this is about, was I think it was the part when they were like, oh, there's foreign agitators coming in and spreading pro dog propaganda. Like that felt like really relevant to like the Palestine protests,
Mm.
because that's exactly that's exactly what they were saying.
Yeah, but it was also made in 2018, so it can apply to a lot. It can apply to a lot, you know. It's not one specific thing, and I think that's what that should be important. So I agree. It shouldn't. You don't have to be subtle, but I think you should have a point, while also still having it make sense within the narrative too.
Yeah,
Um,
it can't just be like I don't want to like watch something that's just like, oh, the government is bad. Okay,
yeah,
it's like, okay, what is the government doing that is bad? What
right.
kind of tactics are they using to get away with it?
Be more specific. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yeah. Um, even though I still don't think this is one of Wes Anderson's best, I think
Mhm.
it is fine that this is your first because again, you know, there's a lot to choose from, and honestly, this is not my least favorite from Wes Anderson. It probably is, but even still, I still like it. I still have a lot that I love in it. So, you know, it's it's still I think that's more to say just how good of a director he is when
Yeah.
even the stuff
I
I'm not the biggest fan of, I can still be like this still rocks, you know?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I probably my one big gripe with it was the ending felt super rushed.
Oh yes, yeah. No, my biggest issues definitely come from the ending and specifically the Greta Gerwig character. Not
Ooh,
even
what are your issues with her?
I did not like her at all. I thought she was played fine because Greta Gerwig can be funny and can be a good voice actress. Duh. I just did not find her character that necessary or that interesting. I think you
She didn't
can
end
make
up being like she didn't really end up being like used very well, if that makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think you could cut her out and instantly fix everything. I think you can make her interesting. I'm not saying cut her out, but like
yeah, I agree.
I think she could have done a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, James also said he didn't like her very much, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he must have like not liked Greta Gerwig's performance very much either, because his letterbox review was like the only time Greta Gerwig has ever made a movie worse.
Yeah, which I can agree to that. um, even still, though, I mean, again, I don't hate Greta Gerwig as an actress. I think she
No,
did
no.
fine for what she did. It was more so just how the character was written.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so that's more of a problem with the writing, which again you can fix, but they just chose not to. With again, there's also a million other characters in the movie, so one not being that great doesn't really take away that much. It is just noticeable because I don't like her. But again, I think there are enough characters that I do like in the movie, so it's fine. Because the focus is not really on her; it is on the little boy and the dogs.
Yeah. The whole time at the ending of the movie, I was like, this is so unrealistic, but also, wow, I wish real life were like this.
Yeah.
It would be so nice if, like, Trump could just have a last minute change of heart. Wouldn't that be great?
It is great because I do like how even though the uncle does have a change of heart at the end, it doesn't necessarily come out of nowhere. There are moments throughout the movie that show he can be reasoned with, but even still, it does still it in general it does feel very last minute, and it feels kind of goofy just how you have all these characters just in one location, and you just have the interpreter just saying what's happening on screen the whole time. It just got
Yeah,
kind of goofy.
it feels like it belongs in a different movie because, like, the tone of the rest of the movie is quite dark and very obviously not for kids, and the ending feels like it belongs in a kids movie.
That is it, what makes it kind of weird. It's like that is kind of what makes the whole movie weird. It's like, is this meant for kids? Because Wes Anderson did make another animated movie years ago, Fantastic Mr. Fox. That
I still haven't seen.
So well, so that is my personal favorite Wes Anderson film, and that is very much a kids movie, but much like Totoro, a kids movie that I feel anybody can get something out of.
Yeah.
Um,
one of my friends just got cast in a stage version of Fantastic Mr. Fox as Mr. Fox. So that's very exciting.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I can at least say, yeah, that's very much a kids movie. Whereas then you get Isle of Dogs, where it's like, okay, this isn't necessarily a kids movie. I feel like I could definitely put this on for a kid, and I wouldn't feel bad about it. But
they make you think they violently killed off half of the main characters in the middle of the film. They didn't. Oh my god. The incinerator gag. Oh my god. I was like, did they really just do that?
That's true. There is a fight at the beginning where like one of the dogs rips off another dog's ear, and that dog's ear is just completely off. So it's like, and
yeah, it's a really like darkly funny movie.
Oh, it's incredibly funny, but it is dark. And then you have Bryan Cranston's dog character who's explicitly saying "bitch" throughout the movie. Which again, though, I feel like these are little moments where it's like, I'll put that on for the kid. It's fine. I wouldn't like put it on for 4-year-olds, but I feel like a 10-year-old kid could get something. Yeah. Like older kids, I would say.
I'd let like a middle schooler watch it.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But even still, that ending does feel very 4-year-old kid ending. Like this works out a little too well. Again, I'm not against that in practice. It's just in theory, I'm fine with it. It's just the movie in practice doesn't really get that across that well.
Cranston has like one of the greatest speaking voices in all of Hollywood. Oh my god. I could listen to that man talk all day. He's on like Morgan Freeman. Did Morgan Freeman narrate this movie, or am I stupid?
No, that wasn't Morgan Freeman.
He didn't. It kind of sounded like him. Who was it?
It's what's his name? Courtney B. Vance. What have I seen him in? He's I guess
familiar.
The only other movies I've seen him in were the Tom Cruise Mummy movie and Terminator Genesis. Yeah, so this is the best movie I've seen him in with, which, yeah, he did a really good job. I thought he added a little bit of flair to that narrator voice.
Well, he's married to Angela Bassett.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wow. I didn't know that. But yeah, speaking of the voice acting, including Greta Gerwig, I think the voice cast is insane. I think this is a very stacked cast, but it's a stacked cast that that is used very well. Wes Anderson is one of those directors I feel can have a bunch of these big actor names in his movie and take advantage of every single one of them. Him and Nolan can have like these very big casts in their movies and take advantage of every single one of them. like
It very much feels like they cast actors before they cast celebrities.
yes. And a lot of these are Wes Anderson regulars. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
these are people who have been in other Wes Anderson movies. But again, they still feel so. I'm sure a lot of them were in it because Wes Anderson's like, hey, you want to be in my next movie? And they're like, yeah, I get to be in another Wes Anderson movie. Cool. But it still feels as though they play their characters as best as they can. Um, it is very obvious when you hear Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, and Edward Norton, but you still like those actors, and I think they do a good job with what they're given. Oh, did you know that? Speaking of the Beatles, did you know Yoko Ono's in this movie?
What?
Oh,
Gee.
so she's assistant scientist Yoko Ono. So she's the oh, what's the guy's name?
Oh wait, she's the guy's the professor's wife.
Yeah, the professor's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
assistant or something
she was
like that.
also a scientist.
Yeah, so that's Yoko Ono, which I always thought was really cool. I'm like, oh,
Crazy.
it's Yoko
That's
Ono.
so
How
cool.
random. But you know what? It even if you didn't know that, I think the character is still she still serves her purpose. It's not like a weird out of nowhere cameo, you know?
Yeah.
And I also just want to mention like the animation is just I even though I would say Fantastic Mr. Fox I like more as a movie, I think this is definitely some of the best animation in a Wes Anderson movie. Just because of how detailed it can get and how clean
The
a lot of it looks.
sushi scene.
Ooh, the sushi. I was just thinking the sushi scene. That's
That was
incredible.
like that was like the only thing I knew going into this movie because I'd seen it in my YouTube recommendations.
Well, yeah, was the scene when like the guys just
Yeah, the
yeah,
sushi scene.
and it's all animated too. Like all the details of make because it looks like the dude is actually making sushi, but then you
Mhm.
remember, oh, he's making the sushi as an animated figure. Like that, it's like these levels to it are just insane.
One of my favorite elements of this movie was definitely the score. I'm like looking at the
Ooh.
Wikipedia page trying to make sure like I know like what instruments they used.
Yeah. So
Oh,
Alexander
it's
Desplat.
saxophones.
Oh,
It's
really?
saxophones. My dumbass thought it was like a bass clarinet or something.
What part?
Uh the thing you hear like throughout the movie that's like the sort of boom boom boom. Uh
Oh, that's saxophones.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude. Saxophone represent. Hell yeah! I was alto sax and marching band in high school.
Mhm.
That's
That's
awesome.
so cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So Alexander
Um
Desplat is the composer, and he's done a lot of good stuff over the years.
I feel like I know him more for like his more like grand orchestral sort of
hmm
score.
Yeah,
Um,
he's done a
but
bunch
this
of
this
Wes
was
Anderson. It
completely
seems.
different. Like obviously I know him from like Harry Potter and
Oh yeah.
stuff. Oh, he did Del Toro's Pinocchio,
Oh yeah.
which this movie reminded me of a lot in some ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
mostly the like anti-fascist stuff.
Yeah, and the stop
Um,
motion stuff. Yeah, and
yeah,
oh, I got to mention this.
stop motion and anti-fascism, such a good combination.
Yeah, Chicken Run, for example.
I haven't actually seen Chicken Run.
Oh, dude, that's like my shit right there. Chicken Run. I love that movie so much. Oh, I highly recommend people check out Chicken Run. It's so good. Um, I just wanted to mention Alexander Desplat also did the 2014 Godzilla film, and even though I'm very mixed on that movie, I really love the score for it. And Alexander Desplat just gives so much life to that score. It's so good.
I feel like in this score, I mean, it's like I said earlier with the whole Wes Anderson concept of like taking a whimsical idea and then exposing sort of like the dark underbelly of it. This score like does that perfectly
Oh yeah.
because it's playful but also like murky and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it moves along the story so well. You even when things got a little goofy and ridiculous, I still wanted to see it to the end because the music is really hyping it up and giving it this
Yeah.
fun energy to it.
Yeah, and I love how crunchy it is. It's
Mm.
like you can feel like how polluted the island is
Yeah,
from how dissonant the chords are.
because it's a trash island.
Yeah.
Trash island and also just abandoned golf course too. But hey, it's cool aesthetics regardless.
what a fun world Trash Island is to explore. Like the middle fingers and the cuticles, like
Yeah.
every little like concept of it was just delightful.
There's the abandoned amusement park. I love the shot when they go to like this ride, and little boy Atari is standing at the entrance, because you see at first is like the ladder and then the bottom of the slide. So it just looks like kind of a standard slide from the angle it's at, but it says like it has the samurai with the sword, and it's supposed to be like, oh, you should be this tall to ride this ride. And that's when Atari's like trying to back away into it, and Chief the dog's like, don't do it, don't do it, come on dude, don't do it. But then he climbs up the ladder, but then the camera pans up, and then you see the rest of the ride. It's like, oh, it's not just a standard slide, there's like this fucking house that it goes into. It's a really interesting shot. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, if we have nothing else, I can get into this DVD if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I happen to have it on a very standard DVD. Nothing that special about it. It has a little slip of paper in it in the section, and it says like, oh, it's for like an animal society. Duh. It's about dogs, so of course. Yeah, there's not much to say about the DVD. I just bought it. I think I bought it just so then we could have it in the collection, just because I liked it at first. There was a time when I didn't like this movie. Like a lot of my love for it was starting to very dip. Because I remember the second time I was looking back through my logs of this movie on Letterboxd. I think the second time I watched it, I really didn't get into it as much. But much like Totoro, it's like I gave this movie a couple of years to kind of simmer in the background, and returning to it definitely helped, where I'm like, okay, I've given time to like let it sit, and rewatching it, giving it another chance, I'm like, you know what? I think there's a lot more good in it than bad. So I'm able to enjoy it. So I definitely want to add this to the collection, not on this standard DVD. I'd probably prefer it on like a much nicer Blu-ray. I wonder what kind of Blu-ray. Is it on the Criterion Collection? Because the other Wes Anderson movies I've talked about on the podcast, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Grand Budapest Hotel, they do have Criterion releases. But I'm wondering, like, does Isle of Dogs have a Criterion release? Because I wouldn't mind having that one.
Criterion is like the really fancy one with all the stuff, right?
Yes. Just looking like it's just a standard Blu-ray, but honestly, a standard Blu-ray would be better than a standard DVD. So I don't know. Is this a Criterion? Oh no, that's a book. Never mind. Yeah, it's looking like it just has a standard Blu-ray release, which is interesting. Because like I feel like this movie. I mean, I feel like this movie is seen as a bit of a black sheep, not the biggest Wes Anderson black sheep. I think some of his other movies are seen as maybe. I feel like Bottle Rocket's probably seen as one of his worst. Maybe that's just me, because I think Bottle Rocket's his worst, even though it was his first movie. So, you know, of course it's not going to be that great. But it is weird that this doesn't have a Criterion release when like a bunch of his other movies does. I feel maybe this wasn't that beloved. So interesting.
Like movies, like, is there like a certain amount of time a movie needs to be out before it's eligible for a Criterion release, or?
I don't think so, because I mean, Parasite has a Criterion release, and that was 2019.
But of course.
Yeah, but that makes sense because it's Parasite.
So I feel like that one got like instant classic status from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. 2019 was huge. But yeah, I don't know. I guess, or maybe like the rights for it are somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe the streaming or the Blu-ray rights are with somebody else, and Criterion wasn't able to get them. Who knows? Honestly, who knows? But honestly, who knows if this will eventually make it on the Criterion? I feel like that should be there. If other Wes Anderson movies are, I don't see why this one shouldn't. But I wouldn't mind getting it on Blu-ray. So I think I'm gonna get rid of this DVD, but I think it definitely has a place in the collection someday. I've been rambling, so please, would you ever own this physically?
Maybe. I haven't really spent a lot of money on like owning movies, but maybe one day I will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, it's sometimes I get that where people are just like, I don't have the room or the finances for physical media. It's like, yeah, no, I totally get that. It's something I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But if you have like a movie that means a lot to you, I think owning it physically should be something I would recommend for anybody, really. Just because at least you have it. But, you know, just something we talk about here on the Physical Media Podcast. But yeah, Isle of Dogs, good movie, I think.
Movie.
Yeah. Lauren, I guess this is the part where you can shout out your stuff, dude. Where can people find you?
What should I plug? Yeah, you can find me on YouTube via my name. So you don't find the Lauren Rogers who talks about Mormon stuff. There's like a video that always comes up where it's like why I left the Mormon church or something like that, and it's all named Lauren Rogers. The profile picture is me as Mopsa in my university's production of Head Over Heels, so it's me wearing a blue dress and a lei. I've got a video that came out recently about my songwriting process. I'm writing an Arcane fan song inspired by Jinx and Silco's relationship, so that's cool. I've got some original songs inspired by Full Metal Alchemist and Good Omens. Some more singing videos, and you can also follow me on Tumblr at David Tennant Gender Envy.
We should also mention you are a Schaffrillas editor, so we can see some of your editing skills.
Editor, yeah, when I have time. Yes.
Yeah, when you have time. Hey, I'm there too.
Yeah, I also wrote the music for like the melody and the orchestrations for the I Want song in the I Want Songs video, the one at the beginning.
There you go.
Ah.
There you go. That's some street cred right there. There you go.
I know. I love getting to tell people I did that.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that, and I'm an editor myself.
Yeah, one of my friends at school who got here this year is a big Schaffrillas fan, and she like knew me from the video, like James's videos, before she knew like that was me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always cool meeting IRL Schaffrillas fans. It's only happened once with me. I think I had like a friend of a friend just be like, oh yeah, this friend of mine, she watches Schaffrillas. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then we never talk about it ever again. It's like, whatever. But that's cool. Yeah, any other links you want to shout out? Or, I mean, all your links will be in the description below no matter what. So,
yeah.
All right.
This has been very fun. I love discussing these movies with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I love discussing them too, and I love doing them in less than an hour. I really appreciate that. I love that we did this in less than an hour, because every episode for like months, for years at this point, has been over an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Like
pretty short and sweet movies.
Short and sweet. Yeah, no, that's all I could ever ask for. So that's awesome. Thank you for that, Lauren. Thank you just in general for coming on to talk about My Neighbor Totoro and Isle of Dogs. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so all right, that's gonna do it. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.